Well, I have two grandchildren, so I could use it because I didn't have the knowledge or skills to teach things to my children, not in a Buddhist way anyway. So maybe I did something right because they ended up, well, quite reasonably well, but maybe I like to do a better job with the grandchildren. So please go ahead, inform us.
Right. Okay. Um, so this is the Sunday Sangha. It's 10 a.m. in the UK now and 4 p.m. in, no, wait a minute, it's not 10. Right now it's what, 9 a.m. for you guys? Would you fell back? Okay.
Yes, that's right.
All right. So I'm glad to see you all in the morning. So, uh, actually, there is quite a lot that we can learn from history and from the way things have been seen over many generations, as well as look at how societies affect the kids. And one of the ways that we can start is if the kid has no society at all, is going to be what we would consider a barbarian. And in order to join our society, we have to put that kid in a restraint. We have to corral him, have to set some limits and some rules. And so, if you have a child that's raised with absolutely no restraints, and sometimes that happens, especially in a royal palace when the little brat decides that he's the king, and nobody wants to be around that kid for the rest of his life. He winds up being a Caligula. In fact, that's what happened to Caligula. He was too well treated. Another, and by the way, that's like that is kind of a Donald Trump, that they can get away with anything because there's been no restraints put on the child at all. And then the other extreme is to put the child to work, and that's the way that our society errs. We err on the side of putting the child to work, not for the child's benefit, but for everybody else's, for the society. You got to be a patriot. You got to join some community and give up your own self. While at the same time, they teach you, oh, well, we're a nation of rugged individuals, and then the child winds up being confused about who he is. So, what actually now we're talking about is let's find a middle path about how to raise a child so that the child gains the good benefit of his education. That in fact, possibly the way that we would go for it is by being able to teach the child wisdom. And one of the qualities of wisdom is being able to think fast on your feet. So there's a few things that children need to be taught. They can be done in games, throwing stuffed animals around the room if they're little kids, or even when they're getting bigger. The more uh, eye-hand coordination they have, the more confidence they'll have that they can handle things. Things get flying around them in real life. So these are some skills that are useful for children. But in fact, I'm not against at all sending even a little kid to karate lessons. Let him get into that, especially if the dojo owner or the sensei or the master teacher or whatever is the kind of guy I would expect to be in the dojo. He's going to be very nurturing to that child, teaching the child to have some confidence. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that we can give to kids to help build up their confidence. And then there's another thing that we can help them do, and that is to start building up their own joy and feeling of self esteem. An example of that is when the child goes off to school in the morning, some parent will say, do a good job, or do what you're told to do, or some such thing like that. And so, a better thing to tell the child, which is something that we're actually going to be rubbing in intentionally, is hey, have a good day today. Go enjoy yourself. Make some new friends. Smile at the teacher. This is the way to teach a child to present himself to the world, is joyfully, but that
Be
joy
friendly
has,
to be
pardon?
friendly to the teacher.
Yeah, to be friendly with the teacher and all the
Yeah,
other students.
yeah.
Yeah, that in
Instead of
fact,
do what you're told.
mhm, that in fact, if it's possible to give the child some extra money so that they can buy what trinkets and lunch things or whatever that's sold at the school for her friends. Not so that she gains power over them that way, but so that she is seen as a person worthy of their respect by her sharing her generosity. And so when I give the child that extra money, that's what we talk about, is to make sure that you're sharing it with your friends. That in fact, several years ago, and this happened in 2 different years, one year after another, the teacher would call Tam and ask, Kitty is giving away her milk and things. Is that okay? That happened twice. So that means that she was showing that generosity. And that's the thing that I would say, that you will be more successful at having a happy child than you will at one who knows a particular uh, curriculum, math or science or whatever like that. That in fact, that's the thing that's really interesting is that teaching the child to do her homework. The way to do that is by teaching the child to have fun doing the homework. So you do it with them in a way that brightens them up, perks them up, teases them, and gets them going so that they can do their own homework happily, as opposed to do it because they were told to do it. They don't like to do it, but they'll do it anyway because they've got to follow the rules. Now, how many of us were raised that way, huh? Hmm. That's the way our society raises us. And so I'm giving you an opportunity. And this is actually your own mindfulness in a way of remembering to brighten and gladden your own mind as you're dealing with a child. It's your duty. In fact, it's your duty to Dhamma. Be lighthearted and friendly and joyous and glad to see the child whenever they show up. Not so much gushy, more just really friendly. So this is a way to have a relationship with a child. Now, let's go into the history of some of this stuff because we've already got some examples. One of the examples I gave you was Caligula. Does anybody know what that means? Little Boots, the emperor of Rome, one of the
Yep.
most bloodthirsty idiots in history because he had no restraint as a child. That in fact, the Caligula, the little boots, meant that he was stomping around the military giving orders, and out of joy and fear, all of the army officers would do whatever this little kid said to do. Then he wound up as an emperor for a few years later, and he was not the best emperor that Rome had. But out of that, we also begin to look at other things and see that actually, you know, there is an issue about a king that is so busy being a king that he's not paying much attention to his child until that child grows up. And now we already know that this kid's going to be a bad king. What do we do with him? Because I wasn't watching over him well enough. But then we'll hang on long enough for that uh, prince, uh, black prince, if you will, if we're in that kind of fairy tale dialogue. When he grows up, and as he grows up, the grandfather, old king, repents the way that he raised his son and raises his grandson to be a proper king. I think that you can actually see that in the royal family in Great Britain right now, that they didn't really want to have the son as the king. They'd prefer to have one of the grandkids as the king. Charles was really not all that popular, and there's a whole lot of reasons why. Probably because he's been a brat his whole life, because he didn't get the training that he needed. So, if we can begin to understand that these things are also cyclic, and that in fact a grandfather can have a great deal of influence on redirecting the grandkids once he sees that he's got a better choice of how he's going to do things. But you can also do that as an older brother or as a dad, whatever your relationship is with the child. You've got a real responsibility to that child. Give him a better education than we got. And we're not talking about which universities we send him to. We're talking about which feeling states we send him into. So if here we are practicing anapanasati and getting joy, that's the gift that we want to give our kids, whatever relationship is with, is to give them nurturing their whole lives, because they're going to get enough criticism from all over the place everywhere else. So let's have the presence of mind to not give the kid grief that he gets from everyone else. Be there for the kid in a really friendly, nurturing way. That's the way. And if we did that, if everybody did that to the kid, he'd wind up being the monster Caligula. But in this case, everybody is on the other side of the fence, giving the child grief and misery and get up and go and do what you're told to do, etc., like that. He needs at least one noble friend who's going to help guide him into a happy life, giving him the confidence. That can be done with physical games. You can actually be a chess teacher of a child and wind up, because you know what you're doing, his mind while you're teaching him chess. The only problem is that's kind of rare. Nobles don't generally play a lot of chess, but that's the example.
So it's not necessarily about one way or the other. It's like if the school is being very nurturing and kind, and turning the child into a brat, then you'd have to set some discipline at home.
Yes. However, I don't know of any schools that are like that. Even the Montessori schools has a more balanced approach with nourishing the kids. That's basically what's missing in Western education, is that side. We somehow get starved of it by the age of 6. See, before the age of 6, we got taken care of. Everything was done. I get a new kid every minute. I got a mommy to wipe me, so everything is just really, really cool for a while. And then all of a sudden things begin to change, and we become a little helper, and become that first grader, and now we have to start doing what we do. Can't wear the clothes that we want to wear. Have to wear shoes even. Do you guys remember that, a time when you lived your life where you didn't really have to wear shoes, and all of a sudden you were told you got to wear shoes? Anybody like that? I remember it well, because we
Remember?
went all summer barefoot. Had to tiptoe across the hot pavement kind of stuff. When you went back to school, you had to put shoes back on. So these are the kind of many tiny but thousands of little rules that we have been given into without recognizing that, hey, I could go walk, I could be the CEO of a bank and walk right in barefoot. And what would have happened? Oh, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to conform norms. And we have a whole lot of norms in our society. And I'm saying all of that because look how many norms that we ourselves are going to be teaching to these children that we have a relationship with in whatever way that you have. Some of them you'll have relationships, children, from time to time anyway. So that's another thing we can recognize that at least we can recognize our own confirmation biases so that we don't teach that to the kids. So that would mean in the regard of teaching the child to keep an open mind. Don't take sides. Do not be a this because they want you to be this, or not be a that because they want you to be that. But stand back and look at what's going on, which is exactly anapanasati, but we don't have to teach it in that kind of a form way it's been arranged. But we can certainly teach the values to our kids in the sense of wake up, what you're doing. Don't get stuck into that. That'll happen more to teenagers than it does to uh, little kids. Little kids are much more self-centered. But by the time they're teenagers, they somehow get political.
No, I was on retreat recently, and the if at first you don't succeed, look at what you're doing. Really did save my butt. So yeah, it's a good because they say try and try, and again, it's like, well, yeah, but first look at what you're doing and then try if you want to.
Right. All right. If you really look at what you're doing, that's the problem. It's the trying. We've been taught to try, taught to focus. We've been taught to concentrate, and nobody knows what that is. All we know is we have to look like that we're in pain and strain, then the teacher will leave us alone. Much better word that we could use, or another understanding of concentration, is the issue of doing it over and over and over again. That's a different kind of way of concentrating. Is it every time, never mind, come back and start again. Do it easy, take it really easy, but keep pushing, keep doing it, coming back. This is also referred to as the applied and sustained thought. Pushing, putting in the right effort. And in fact, I had the idea, and we're talking about kids. So imagine that you've got a kid here in the swing. You know, we had ropes or chains, and the first part is that the child is heavy. So that first push is the most effort that we ever have to put in. So after the child then is moving a little bit, that now we can stand behind him, and every time it comes back, we give it a little push. We don't have to get energetic or try to wrap around the pole or any of that kind of stuff. We're just going to keep pushing. So long as we keep pushing, the ride keeps going. Which is the samsara. Yes, this is the and instead of hating samsara, now we're beginning to use it as a friend and make use of it. We go through this cycle, this wholesome cycle of keep remembering to push, an easy push. Keep pushing. That's the right effort. Is continuing to remember to push. Okay, so what is it that we're pushing? Well, we're pushing on one thing, we're pushing unwholesome thoughts out of the mind and pushing wholesome thoughts in. Another one is that we're pushing just a little bit to make sure that this is a deep in breath or an out breath. So we sort of go around checking things out. That's the Satipatthana, foundations of mindfulness, which reminds me of a joke, and that is that on the plane there is a priest sitting in the middle, and on one side of him is a Jewish rabbi, and on the other side of him is a Theravada Buddhist monk. Okay? they're talking with each other about religion and whatnot, and all of a sudden, um, the plane drops hard, because of turbulence or whatever like that. And the Catholic priest starts doing, you know, the rosary. While he was doing that, he noticed that the Jewish rabbi is doing it too. Then he noticed that the Buddhist monk is doing it too. And he says, hot dog, I've got two of them converted. And all it took was a bit of turbulence. And then he asked, well, Rabbi, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I was just checking things out. Spectacles, testicles, watch, and wallet. Everything okay? And so that's the way that we learn to look, is on the outside. Are the spectacles, testicles, watch, wallet, all of that. And then he turned to the Buddhist monk and he says, well, why are you doing the genuflect? And he says, oh, I was just checking. Is my mind okay? Is my actions okay? Is my breathing okay? Is my heart right? And so this is the kind of checking that we can do on a regular basis. How's your mind? How's your actions? How's your speech? How's your breathing? How's your heart? Just checking that over and over again. This is the satipatthana. Just look at what's happening. What's the body doing? What's the feelings doing? What the mind is doing? All of that kind of stuff is actually part of the practice. But it also has the intention of actually making a change. Not just noting and looking at it the way that it is. Where is the change and where's the improvement at? Oh no, in fact, that we have a responsibility once we see what's going on, especially if we recognize an unwholesome thought as unwholesome. We're actually, by the Dhamma, obligated to do something about that. That's in fact part of our duty to the Dhamma, is to straighten out our own mind, just like we have a duty to our children in the Dhamma to help straighten their mind out also. So we have to keep taking the effort over and over and over again, to take the effort. Look at what we're doing in the mind and make a change, gladden the mind, brighten the mind, making the mind full of joy, bringing it into a state of safety, security, comfort, relaxation. And then we become satisfied. And that's the key ingredient, that feeling of satisfied. Because guess what? That's exactly opposite of being dissatisfied. And this is what the whole process is all about, is coming out of our dissatisfactions and getting the mind in a state of satisfaction. So as we begin to practice doing that for ourselves, we can also begin to invite our children that we're around to be in a state of glee, in a state of joy, in a state of satisfaction. Not by asking them a lot of questions, do you like this or do you like that? But more of kind of teasing them, bringing them into the present, playing little gotcha games, like tickling their feet or not looking. Or can they catch you coming into? These are the kind of games, wakey, wakey, I'm here. You recognize that the Zen master just walked in the room with his Zen stick? Except that we can play with it as a toy. And the kids can. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was remembering your story about the rabbi and the Buddhist monk and the priest, the Catholic priest. I heard a similar story recently about a teacher, Ajahn Tong, who taught in the Mahasi. So just very quickly for those in the Mahasi who, it's just noting. So it's like, lowering, 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 touching, 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 turning, turning, covering, 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 turning, 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 raising, raising, raising. Anyway, apparently
That, by the way,
he
is a foot that you're talking about.
yeah,
Okay.
and so um, apparently he was in a minibus in Thailand with a bunch of other um, monks, and a bit of a stormy day or um, unsafe driver or dangerous road, and suddenly the minibus goes off the road, flips over, rolls over again, and then lands on its wheels. And everyone's freaked out, right? Especially because the Ajahn is near the front and very special to them. And so they go out of the minibus and they go to the Ajahn side, open the door. And I believe this is the case in Thai. Um, they don't really have an expression for "Are you okay?" But what they do ask instead is "What did you do?" I don't know, Dhammarato.
Pamalai. Pamalai
Yeah,
Poon. Yes, I know that one. And also Sibadi Mai is another one. Are you okay or are you well?
yeah. And so in response to the "What did you do?" Ajahn just looked and he just said, "Turning, turning, turning."
Yes. Watch closely now. Watch what's going on.
uh, just like that.
Well,
It's like, well, not much
actually,
else I can do, so just note turning. Then just the world is turning. It's not just your hand; the world is turning around you.
well, actually, that's correct more than you know. It takes a bus turning around till you recognize that that bus too is in your mind and that's what's spinning around. So we can take in any information as just information, or we can take it and put a spin on it, which is basically the teaching of Paticca Samuppada anyway, which would lead then to the next item that we could talk about with the kids, and that is uh, okay, number one is friendship with the child, nurturing. That's the number one. The second one in that regard is always be true, honest, real with the child. Okay? That in fact, if the child, for instance, has an imaginary friend, that you can go along with it for a little while, and then say, is your little friend is he real? The child will probably say, no, he's not real, but that's okay as long as he knows that his friend is not real. So this is the way that we begin to notice things then with the child is let them be and nourish them, but always kind of bring them back to reality. Because there's a whole lot of missions and missionaries and all kinds of things out there that are trying to convince the child of one thing or another. That's back to that item is that we're going to teach wisdom to the child. Okay, and so the part of the way of doing that is by being honest with them.
So how do you handle a bit of a bratty child? Maybe it's not your child, but you know, uh,
Oh, and the child is a brat, a bratty child, you say?
yeah, the one who's been a bit too nurtured, and you know, let's say the schools. Oh, yeah, I'll grant you that the schools aren't that, but I can think of some parents who raise bratty kids.
Actually, one of the ways that the common society will do that, and let's talk about that first, is that they're going to put the kid in some sort of military academy or some school if they can afford it. And normally, the bratty kids that are that bratty, their parents are wealthy enough to get rid of them, put them in some sort of school. Okay, and that's going to cement that brattiness right into place. They may go and gain some fame or whatever like that in the school, in some some distinction or whatever, but the brattiness will be nurtured and cultured. So, one of the ways then that we're going to deal with the brattiness is not by being a brat back to them, but to fame injury, play with them, uh, uh, say things like, oh, big tough boy, big tough kid. Begin to point out to what they're doing in a playful, joyful way, rather than telling them that you don't like their being a brat. That in fact, when they are a brat, you could do something like, aha, there it is, I see that again, and actually do what we're doing in Anapanasati in that
Mm.
regard, to wake up and to say something in a way that helps the kid to wake up too. Another way that we can do that in a way is that generally the kids that are bratty are also already unhappy and they're expressing their unhappiness. And so one of the ways that we can handle a bratty kid like that is to try to tease him into smiling. One of the ways of telling a kid that actually this is hypnotic. This is kind of a secret. You can get anyone to smile by telling them that they have a smile. There it is. I see that thing. Oh yeah, it's going to grow around the edges now. Oh, now, and by then, I mean, no kid can hang into theirs. They cannot keep a grump on that long when you start to tease them into being happy. So that's the way that I would treat the kid, is treat the kid, the little brat, treat him with joy and respect and tease him when he's actually being a brat and let him see that the way that it is. In fact, when you've got his real confidence and friendship going, you can actually ask him, is being a brat, do you like doing that? Do you see that a lot of people don't? Me, I don't care. I like you being a brat. But do you see the disadvantages of being a brat?
Mm.
Hot doggity dig. Now we're doing Anapanasati full on. See, let him see for himself the unwholesomeness in it. But we have to accept him first. I know you can handle that. And in fact, if you're really skilled, if you do it 2 or 3 times with 2 or 3 kids, you'll be able to do that the fourth time in 10 minutes, the whole show. So get the confidence that, yeah, you can talk a child into smiling. You can take a child into looking at his behavior, assess whether it's valuable or not. Then you can kind of make a pact with it. I tell you what, every time that you act like a bully and I see it, I'm going to tease you about it. Is that okay? And now you've got that repetitive part going over
Mhm.
and over and over again. Aha, I see that bully. I see him. Do you see him? And the kid's about to grin right then. And he says, I bet you do see it because you're grinning at me. And now he's just about to break out in a great big grin. By letting it be okay that he's a bully, your perspective, so that he then can see it for himself, that it's not all of that wholesome for him. Guess what? This takes wisdom on your. This takes a whole lot of anapanasati to stay with that kid without getting pissed off and becoming bully to him to teach him how to do it even better. Which is probably the way that everybody else is in the family with him, is out bully him. So that's a really, really good example right there. Is how to handle it. Does anybody else have any examples or any other off the topic questions or whatever like that? Christoph, did you get your question answered about how you're going to deal with your grandkids?
part of it anyway. Part of it. Yeah, it's an interesting approach. Well, I'm more or less in that approach anyway. So I figured that one out a little bit by myself, I suppose. The real question that I have no answer at all is: should we try to teach a young child meditation in a formal way, like trying to make it concentrate on the breath? Is this something wise to do? Do we have the right to impose this on a child? And if so, how do we do it in a playful, non-pushy way? Uh, Something like that.
I've
I can
got
guess the answer to this.
okay, go right ahead, Drew. You got it. You got the floor.
You don't want to frame it as meditation. You want to say, "Ah, I'm tired. Aren't you tired? You know what? Let's just sit here and take a big deep breath." And then they might say, "Oh, but I want to go do this. But isn't that a lot of effort? You have to get up and then do that. Why not just and make it seem like they have give them as like you can do that later, right? But right
Mm-hmm.
now, like just right now, see if you can have fun doing nothing." So that's one
Mm-hmm.
my guess, but maybe Dhammarato can clarify something along those lines.
Actually, congratulations. That's really good. All we can do is sort of add or expand to that. And one of the ways that I was about to say is here we've been talking for about 35 minutes about teaching the child how to be present, how to look at what's going on in his mind. That in fact, the only thing that kind of left was doing much of teaching them how to breathe well. But Drew just mentioned that and brought that into it. And so we've actually been teaching Anapanasati already. We're just not talking about it that way. We're actually practicing it. That Buddhism can be done this way. But there is no reason to even add the word Buddha to it because there's got so much freak out about, oh, it's not my religion. It must be bad kind of thing. As opposed to, oh, no, just be friends. I mean, that's what Jesus taught. That was the number one thing that Jesus taught. Treat other people the way that you want to be treated, and you want to be treated in a friendly, kind manner. So now we're going to do that with the kids. Then there's the old one, suffer the little kids to come unto me, for such already is the kingdom of heaven. The kids have got it. The kids are going to be your teacher. And I let the yeah, that's the secret is when you start to become the wise old master for them, they'll have a thing to teach you or two. So, uh, yeah, we can approach it from the, the way this is just old ancient wisdom. And we should practice it that way rather than call it Buddhism or call it meditation or call it Anapanasati. That's just a habit I've got. That's my confirmation bias by talking about it in using all of this Pali or whatever. But we don't have to use it that way. You could just use it in the sense of uh, be very, very glad, joyous that you've got grandkids around. What marvelous toys those things are to play with. They're both programmable and already intelligent. And so, yeah, it's a joy to be around the kids. So express your joy with them. Let them be of enormous value to you as you become valuable to them by being close and friendly and give them uh, the nurturing that has probably already been taken away from them by their parents because their parents didn't quite recognize that. So, in fact, that's another thing that we can do is we, by example, us grandpas, can teach mom and dad how to come back into the nurturing quality of being with their child rather than being critical of him so much of the time. Yeah, telling the kid to sit down and say, "Hey, why don't we take a nice deep long breath? We don't have to go anywhere or do anything. We don't have to pull our sister's hair. We don't have to trip anybody. We can just sit here and just chuckle as if we did it by our thoughts. We don't have to do anything." So yeah, we can teach the child in many ways like that without them do anything formally about it. In fact, the formality of the practice is going to be for us old dudes to remember to smile when you see that child. What a delightful toy this is to play with. That's what we have to remember. Because we're most likely to go back into, oh, this kid's got an education to learn, and I'm going to teach it right now. That whole mentality that we have, we can drop that critical mindedness and be friendly with the child. That's where we really want to get to. That's true.
Oh no, I've got nothing to say.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
I can share a story about my kid. So, hey, Veda. So I've been teaching my elder kid. He's recently turned 3 to meet his emotions in kind of a productive way. And because, for example, I was just taught to suppress everything down, and yeah, at some point that's not really useful. But you don't really have many strategies apart from bursting out in anger or something. But yeah, anyway, I digressed. I have been teaching him, so you're small, this is a big emotion, but emotions pass, and I have been teaching him to take deep breaths. We have made a game to take like 10 deep breaths and stuff. And you are right, they do come already intelligent. So there were some times, like, for example, I am angry, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I see you're angry. You should take some deep breaths now." And I'm like, "Oh, don't get all Zen master on me, little guy. I have seen you try to open a candy wrapper, please." But yeah.
Absolutely correct. That's exactly, okay. So what you're talking about now is exactly what I'm recommending. Okay, and now you're using with the issue of anger. Aha, I see you angry. To be able to, because most kids they have the idea that they're not supposed to be angry. So when they're accused of it, they will deny it. But when you tease them about it, you give them kind of the okay that it's actually okay to be angry, and now they can actually experience what anger is. Do you like being angry? What does it do to you? Does it make your neck tight? How about your fist, your hands? Do you feel good doing that with your body? Being all huff puff and angry and whatnot? Take a good look at what's going on. And you do
Yeah.
that with a great big smile rather than,
Yeah.
oh, you want to look what you're doing.
Yeah,
That
I've
is,
been hammering like the point of it will pass, and there have been cases where he's angry, and like he's so angry he's almost in a tantrum, and he gets angry that it doesn't pass, and he's like, "I want it to pass, I want it to pass," and he's stomping around. It was very funny.
well, you could actually then mock him. Depends upon his age and conditions, but you could mock him by kind of pretending to stomp around saying, I want it to stay, I want it to stay.
I
I want
haven't
it to
thought
pass, I
about
want
that.
it to pass, and you're going, I want it to stay, I want it to stay, and he'll take a look at you, and you can smile at him, and then you can tease him, you know. Guess what? I don't get my way. And you want your way, that's why you feel bad. Look how bad you feel because you want something. And so there's the Dhamma. We can teach the Dhamma to kids, and they pick it up really fast to their great benefit for the rest of their lives. kind of wants me to go out looking for angry kids to play with. Oh, hello,
I'll give it a.
Dave. Welcome. Right, we've been at it for an hour now.
Yeah, people are showing up at the regular time now.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's only regular after they change their clock.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I read somewhere about this, but there was a culture or tribe where teasing was the default, in especially in terms of dealing with anger. And I found that refreshing to read many years ago, and it's just to remind this conversation reminding me of that.
Oh, tell me what you read.
It is literally what we've been saying. It's just like if a child gets upset over a little thing, then um, instead of all the usual kind of Western discipline tactics, this particular culture was saying, like, well, are you really, are you getting upset because you don't have this? Are you upset because you don't have this thing that you want? And it's like, really? Like, is that is that what you want to do?
Uh-huh. Okay, well, here's what I could say about that, and that is that you're actually talking about reasoning with the child, and when they're angry, that's hard to do. I mean, have you ever been angry? Are you easy to reason with when you're angry? Knowing that, that means that no, we have to make a change first. We have to open the door before we walk right in. Otherwise, we'll just keep banging ourselves into the door. So we don't use logic right away. We have to set it up. And the way that we set that up is by turning his energy into a kind of playfulness out of the anger. We begin to dance together. If he's dancing by stomping around, we go stomp around with him. We might even, in fact, start clapping our hands and singing a song to change it from him stomping and angry into him dancing. So this is the kind of change that we make of it for him to begin to wake up and make that kind of change for himself. And you're assisting him doing that by just dumping all of this joy on this little brat. Okay, so when they're a little bully, when they're a little brat, that's a little bit softer. But when this kid gets really ticked off and to the point that he's stomping around and maybe about to throw stuff, that's when it takes this kind of heavy duty joy intervention. You're muted.
I found the example. This was Jean Briggs traveling to the Arctic Circle, and she was living with an Inuit family, and whatever went wrong, they never responded in anger, where she was adjusting to the difficult circumstances and she was much more angry all the time. And she was like, how do these people never get angry? And so it was they're walking on a stony beach, and then a young mother's playing with her toddler. And then the mum picks up a pebble and says, go on, hit me with it. Hit me harder. And so the boy threw the rock at the mother, and then she said, ow, that hurts. Ow, that really hurts. And so that was one of the examples that they gave, which was kind of teaching them the consequences of the anger, and also viewing acting in anger, right? Acting out, let's say, as a childish, not childish, childish is the wrong word, but as a immature thing to do. Bratty, yeah. Bratty thing. Because not all children are like that. Bratty, but yeah.
Enough of us are. Some of us are pretty skilled at it.
I posted a link in the chat if anybody's interested.
Oh, that's good. Yes, we'll put that in. So yes, these are the methods, though. Like in the sense of, it's kind of hard for the mom to be, ouch, that really hurts in reality. And she knows, and the kid knows that she's playing with him anyway. So that's an obvious point for the joy, especially when you can come back with them at like the first time. Is that all you've got? Come on, let me have it. And then the next thing they do is, oh, poor me. Yes, these are ways that we begin to play with the children, and you're exactly right. Teaching them the consequences of their behavior that they can see for themselves rather than us rubbing it in. So there's another kind of way of looking at that, and that is that our whole culture is designed around laws that have consequences and punishments, like prisons, fines, and things like that. But these prisons are not designed the way that we would design a Sangha, which has to do for rehabilitation. And in this case, we don't want to punish the child for his wrongdoing. We want to rehabilitate him. So this is the way that we would look at that, is not to get angry back at the kid for being angry. That's just going to rub it in for him. So we play with him, let him see that yes, he does have some power, but he's not all of that powerful. But so it's kind of in between. You see, this is kind of the rock and the hard place of the two extremes. Is that the child feels like he's got no power, which is where we all generally are. We all feel like we're victims. We don't really have that kind of control. We're not really on top of our work. But then we have the little monster maniac, the Caligula, the Donald Trump, that think they can get away with anything because when they were kids, they could get away with anything. Here, that middle path then is the path of the Buddha, so that we have to put some kind of restraints. Those restraints cannot be handcuffs. At best, the way to restrain a child is with a smile, because we're intending to rehabilitate him, to help him be happy rather than punish him. Because if we punish him, then we're actually saying, no, I don't want you to be happy, little kid. I want you to hurt. I want to be the karma machine itself. I'm the one who determines what is good and bad actions, and I'm going to make sure that you get it. Okay, so this is how we treat our kids, and that we can make sure that we don't do that, that we're going to actually see ourselves as the kid himself. There's two kids. That's the way of thinking about it, is that recognize that you're going to treat this kid the way that you would want to treat a second kid that was there. That second kid is you. So what we're looking for then is nourishment, knowledge, and rehabilitation, not punishment. And the way that we get started with that is friendship. A whole lot of Buddhism in there without even talking in the word of Buddhism. So does anybody have any extra things to add to this? Wow, this has been a very interesting conversation. I've enjoyed it.
No, I forgot about the anger, the Inuit. If you have some time, it's a short article. It's worth reading. And it kind of goes into, I think the basic approach is let the anger pass, right? Don't really respond, kind of just ignore it. And then they say they reenact the same situation, but this time they playfully, And this time they ask the kid questions so that they learn a different response. Which is what you were saying. It's like you don't reason with the person when they're angry, you reason once they're calm.
Right, exactly. Okay, but in that way, what more is there to it? That's anapanasati right there.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
We have done that with our kids. Like, he used to get really upset when somebody took his toy, and he knows this is not good behavior, but you know, kids are kids and they're gonna take their toys sometimes, pry them from each other's hands. And we did a lot of like pretend play of that situation. And you know, and we were saying you can have a different reaction and just say no, and you know, push back the hand that tries to pick her, and it actually works some of the time. You know, 3-year-olds, they have their limits, but
I know. Here's one that you can do it. I mean, this is the way that we actually train dogs. So 3-year-olds fit into this also. The next step then is to have a pretend play game where the child wants the toy and he is very joyful to give it to them. Okay, to go that one step further, to actually teach him to be joyful. Aha, yeah, you see, you can give that thing away. It didn't have to belong to you. You feel a whole lot better by letting it go.
well, thank you. This is like a really nice suggestion. Nice, thanks.
Okay. Yes, that's the whole quality then of that rehabilitation, is teach them to actually be able to control themselves so that they can actually create their own joy. See, he was creating misery for himself because he was clinging to a truck, when in fact he could be greatly joyful by being generous with it. I mean, what the heck? It's only a truck. Whole walls full of trucks in this gym, you know. And that will help teach the child actually later in life then to not get attached to much of anything like that.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah, so we can begin to teach the kids not attachment through generosity. And then the gratitude that comes with the generosity.
It's really amazing when you start to see it happen, you know, the kid actually coming over to you with something and giving it to you, or, you know, to another kid.
I know, to be honest with you, I really like that about Kitty. She's 10 years old and she very happily now can bring coffee when I ask her for it. She really is happy to do that. That's something that's really joyful. I like that you can serve and happy doing it. So she may wind up being a president of some bank or another just because she's learned that little technique, giving people what they need and smile. In fact, we could all benefit from that. To learn to practice it. Everybody's our friend, and whatever they need, yeah, let's give it to them. The Indians call it walk a mile in my shoes, but Jesus talked about them that, you know, if they need your shirt, give them your coat also. Be generous with your friends. Give them what they need.
Did I ever tell the story of the time that I was driving back from a retreat and I needed a favor from a stranger?
No, I don't think you did.
It was a great one. So I was driving back from a retreat. It was a long drive, so I stopped in at one of those rest stops, right? A little bit of car parking, all the shops, toilets, etc. And obviously, I made a few mistakes, and I know now that. But in the time, I got a little bit stressed, and I wasn't quick enough to spot it. So I pulled into a parking spot, and it was a bit tight because there were other cars behind me. I was feeling a bit okay. Fine. And then while straightening up, I got even tighter. And so I was like, okay, I can barely get out on this side. I can get out the other side. That's fine. But I'm a bit stuck here. And the two cars next to me, you know, they could be here for a while. But there was an elderly couple in the car in front. And I figured, well, if this elderly couple reverses about half a parking space, then that just gives me enough space to straighten up. I can do that, and then I'm done, right? So I got out, and I was like, look, I am really sorry, but I messed up. Would you be able to reverse about half a parking space so I can just straighten up? And they were like, no. I have seen, I accidentally touched the car, and it was a touch. It was not a hit. I accidentally touched the car, and they were like, you're a terrible driver. I am worried about my car. I am not going to let you straighten up. And I was like, all right. So then I was like, okay, what are my options here? Well, I need to use the toilet. So let me go use the toilet, and I'll come back and I'll just sit and wait. And sure enough, I came back, I sat and I waited. I had a cookie. And the couple that was in the car in front of me, eventually they just pulled out and drove away in about 10, 15 minutes. And I was just left thinking, well, okay, that was a bit strange, and I felt a bit, but some people just don't know that thing of, if you can help someone and it's not even that much trouble to you, do it. There's clearly this person in that situation didn't remember that. And I was quite surprised that if someone needs something and you can, why not?
But that's because you're coming from the point of wisdom rather than the point of feeling like you've got to protect everything. And that's what happens basically with old people is that we get very protective. How dare you to come up to our car window with that skin? And they don't even have that as a conscious thought.
Yeah.
But it's leaning that way because of the fear that's been built into the society. Be afraid, kinds of things. And it fits in with our nature. That's what the self-preservation instinct all about is. And so we run around being afraid. And one of the things that we stay afraid of is things we don't know. We call this tribalism, by the way. And the political parties, various ones, capitalize on that tribalism. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our society that teaches tribalism and protectionism. Oh, I've got to guard what I have. That whole idea then is the formation for the Republican Party and the way that politics are in the United States today. Is based upon the fear that is promoted. They read about it, become more afraid. Then people who they don't know come up to them. So the thing of it is that you did just fine. You can congratulate yourself and pat yourself on the back that you took the noble way out the whole way. You did just fine. So you know now that you have the confidence that next time you have a situation similar or more difficult, you'll be able to handle that one too.
Yeah, that's true. And also next time, just go for the easy parking spot. Walk a little more. There's no need to
go for the easy parking spot. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a big car, and some of these parking bays are small. It's like, well, there's no, my legs are fine. I can go.
Life-changing advice right there.
Yes, exactly. Just some exercise, up 2, 3, 4, or you can think of, well, maybe a little car will do.
Oh yeah, in this case, I didn't have a choice, but yes, a little car would definitely do. But yeah, and also, I mean, there was the aspect of it, which was I was scared of parking after that for a bit. I was just like, you know what? I've done this before. It's only a couple of times. I messed up that time. I messed up the time afterwards. And both were times that I was rushing. So I was like, if I'm rushing, take an easy spot. If I've got time, take whatever spot I want.
Or when you're rushing, wakey, wakey, see that rushing inside and recognize that I'm going to get the parking place that is further away where nobody's parking.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I do now.
And then I'll
That's
feel really relaxed by the time I huff it all the way into that store.
that's what I do. That's what I do now. I was like, I don't. This thing is not trustworthy when I'm rushing. So
Yes, those many where there's many words for that. People call it a panic, an anxiety attack. Um, uh, I recognized it first, and then have the term of the hurry up. I could feel that hurry up inside, and so uh, it's recognizable. It's an actual physical body feeling. It's the kind of feeling that is so strong that it actually makes us run when there's no reason to run at all. And so the better thing to do is to take a look at that feeling of being in a hurry, feeling of anxiety, feeling of gotta go do something in a hurry, gotta go. Then we can take a deep breath and say, "Well, I'm glad I saw that. Let me rehabilitate myself right now rather than punishing myself for it. Kick myself around for being anxious and uptight. I can say, yeah, I've been there before, done that. I'll be okay." We take a deep breath and relax and do that while we're walking the store.
Yeah, driving
Um,
is a really good practice for attitude change, because for a lot of drivers it, like, generates either anxiety or anger based on, the driving conditions in particular countries. And yeah, if you just sit down with the intention, this will actually be a nice drive. I will, chill. I will park in an easy spot that's farther away from where I want to park. And it's just like such a nice time.
but our society doesn't support that. Our society's hurry up. Where you been, Mom? You shopped too long. That whole mentality of being in a hurry, and now we wind up doing that to the cars where it's actually quite dangerous to be in a hurry and being driving a car.
Yeah, an agitated person in, a few tons of steel moving at tens of kilometers per hour is not
Hmm. They
optimal
call it
conditions.
road rage. Uh, but basically, it's just a whole lot of people who are uptight. They're tense. Before rage happens, they're all tensed up, but they don't know it. They're in a hurry. Weren't in a hurry. What road rage could possibly come up anyway? Almost always the road rage has to do with being cut off. Somebody comes in front of us, or something like that we don't like. Maybe he's just going faster than we are. We're just saying, what is he doing going so fast? That kind of. Or if there's a grandma in front of us, we honk our horn, get out of the way, old lady. And so it's very much speed oriented with our cars. We can't see them as just taxis or just transportation. Perhaps when robo taxis come, humanity can settle down when we don't have to drive the darn thing. You just enjoy the ride, fine. And so the whole idea is, especially going back to teaching the kids, is that if we can recognize our own anxiety, then that will help us to recognize the anxiety when the child is having it also. So it really does have to do with the fact that if we're going to train a child, we got two to train. So, does anybody have any extra things? This has been a delightful conversation. I really enjoyed it, guys. Thank you. Anybody got any last remarks? Jamie, how about you? You got something to say?
I was just relating heavily to the driving along, and you get somebody driving past way too fast, and you're like, what is that guy doing? What is his problem? And really, I just care about it so much. This is really weird. And I noticed it the other day when I went for a drive. I was like, wow, yeah, I can actually see this now. I can see that my thoughts while I'm driving the car, so many thought moments occupied by kind of like resentment or something. And then after a while, I start to build up the tension in my pit of my stomach. And I'm like, wow, now I'm really not enjoying driving.
Excellent awareness, guys. Give him a hand. Thank you for wakey. Yes, exactly so.
Yeah, we could end it with the joke. George Carlin had this joke about the drivers that for people there are two types of drivers. So relating to them, so it's either idiots. Look at this idiot, how slow he's going, and fucking maniacs. He's going too fast. So, I'm the only competent driver. Everyone else is either an idiot or a maniac. That's how it tends to be.
Okay, guys. Well, this is great. We'll see you later. Thank you for this conversation. May all your little children be happy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.